All right, so today we're diving deep into accessibility audits.
Sounds important.
It is, especially if you, like me, are really into making the digital world, well, a more inclusive place.
I hear you.
Yeah, so we've got a source here called What is an Accessibility Audit and Why Your Business Needs One?
Catchy.
Right. Okay, so let's just jump right in.
Yeah.
What exactly an accessibility audit?
Well, it's like taking a fine-tooth comb.
Okay.
Yeah. To your website, your app, really any digital platform you've got going.
So you're looking for like roadblocks or something?
Yeah, exactly. Anything that might stop people with disabilities from, getting the full experience.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So, okay, I get the inspection analogy, but beyond just being a good thing to do, why should businesses really care about this stuff?
Well, imagine you're trying to read something online.
Yeah.
And the text is like pale gray on a light background.
Oh, yeah, my eyes.
Right. That's a color contrast issue. And for someone with low vision, that's a huge barrier.
Yeah, I can see that.
But the thing is, fixing that contrast makes the text easier for everyone to read.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And that's kind of the cool thing about accessibility. A lot of times it helps everyone, not just people with disabilities.
I like that. A win-win.
Totally.
So it's not just about checking off boxes on some list.
Oh, but there are definitely checklists.
Okay.
Like the WPCAG, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines.
Yeah, I see those mentioned here.
Right. And they might sound technical.
A little bit. Yeah.
But they're really all about making sure digital content is perceivable, operable, understandable.
And robust, that's in here too.
Yeah, robust. It all boils down to making sure everyone can actually use the content no matter their abilities.
So I'm guessing that if you ignore all these guidelines, there might be some consequences.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like what?
Well, in the U.S., there's the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Right.
And it doesn't actually talk about websites specifically. But courts have started saying that it applies to digital stuff, too, especially for businesses that also have physical stores.
So even if your actual shop is accessible, your website needs to be too.
Exactly. If you ignore accessibility, you're opening yourself up to lawsuits. And nobody wants that, right?
Definitely not.
But there's another side to it too.
Okay.
It's not just about the legal stuff.
Uh-huh.
If you don't prioritize accessibility, you're missing a huge opportunity.
Interesting. Well, this source mentions over 1 billion people worldwide have some kind of disability.
It's a big number.
Yeah, that's a big market to ignore.
It is, but it's not even just about the numbers. When you make your digital stuff accessible, you're sending a message.
What kind of message?
A message of inclusion.
Yep.
You're basically telling everyone, hey, you're welcome here. We value you.
And that goes a long way.
It does. That kind of reputation, you can't really put a price on that.
So you're saying it's less about checking boxes and more about building a brand that stands for something good.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I mean, there's still boxes to check, for sure.
Right.
But a really good accessibility audit can help you find those boxes.
And figure out how to check them, I guess.
You got it.
Okay, I'm interested. Tell me more about how this whole process actually works.
Sure. So first of all, you've got this accessibility consultant.
Like an advisor?
Yeah, kind of. Think of them like your accessibility guide, your Sherpa, leading you through the whole process.
Okay, interesting image.
They'll help you see where you're at, right now.
Yeah.
And figure out where the barriers are.
And then what?
And then they make a plan to fix them, like a roadmap.
So they don't just point out problems, they actually help you solve them.
Yeah, exactly.
I see.
They bring all this specialized knowledge, all their experience, so you're not just guessing.
That makes sense. Now, this source also talks about accessibility testing services. What's the difference between those and having a consultant?
Well, testing services are a big part of the audit.
Okay.
It's like having a bunch of different people looking at your website from different angles.
I see.
They'll use automated tools, which are kind of like spell check for accessibility.
Okay.
But they'll also do manual testing. And that finds a whole other set of problems.
So what are they looking for in these tests?
All kinds of stuff, like missing alt text for images.
Alt text, that's for people who can't see the images, right?
Exactly. People who use screen readers.
Got it.
They also look for keyboard navigation problems, which can really impact people with, mobility issues.
Wait, keyboard navigation? Why is that so important?
Well, not everyone uses a mouse.
I guess not.
Some folks have motor disabilities and can't really use a mouse, so they rely on the keyboard to get around websites.
Makes sense.
And, a lot of power users, like people who work with spreadsheets and stuff, they love keyboard shortcuts.
Oh, yeah. I use those all the time.
So, again, it's about how accessibility can actually help everyone, in all these ways you might not expect.
I'm seeing the theme here.
That's what makes it so cool, right?
Yeah. So we've got our consultants, our testing teams. What's next?
Well, I think it's time to dive into those audit steps.
Sounds good. Let's do it. All right. So we've got our consultant, our testing teams ready to go. What's first? What's step one in this whole accessibility audit thing?
Well, before you even start testing, you got to figure out what you're trying to achieve, right? What are your goals for this audit?
Like, what am I hoping to get out of this?
Yeah, exactly. Are you mostly worried about, like, ADA compliance and avoiding legal trouble?
Could be.
Or is it more about making a really inclusive experience for everyone?
I mean, ideally both, right?
Of course, ideally both. But knowing which one is your main focus, it's going to shape the whole audit.
So you're saying define the why before you jump into the how.
Exactly. Once you've got that clear, then you can start figuring out where you stand right now. Like, what's the current state of your website?
And how do you do that?
Well, this is where those automated testing tools come in handy.
Oh, right, like Wavy and Act.
You got it. Those are great for a quick scan. They'll flag things like, oh, you're missing alt text on this image, or your color contrast isn't good enough.
So it's like a first pass, a quick checkup.
Exactly. It gives you a general idea of where you stand.
And then what?
Then comes the really important part, the manual testing.
Okay, and why is that so important?
Because this is where a human, a real expert, comes in.
Okay.
They can go beyond what the automated tools can do, They can actually evaluate the experience, especially for people using things like screen readers.
Oh, right. Those are for people with visual impairments.
Exactly. A screen reader basically reads the web page out loud, so the code needs to be really clear and well-structured.
So a computer program can only catch so much.
That's right. Think about it. An automated tool might tell you that you're missing an alt tag.
Okay.
But it can't tell you if your headings are all messed up or if the reading order makes sense for a screen reader.
So someone actually using a screen reader might get totally lost.
Exactly. And that's why you need a human who understands all those nuances to test it out.
That's a really good point. It's not just about fixing individual errors, it's about the whole experience.
You got it. And that's what makes manual testing so crucial. It's about truly evaluating how accessible and usable your website is.
For everyone.
For everyone, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say your consultant's done the manual testing, you've run those automated checks. What's next?
What happens then?
Well, now you've got a list, right? A list of all the accessibility issues they found.
Yeah.
Plus recommendations on how to fix them.
That to-do list.
Basically. And now it's time to get to work. This is where you'll probably need to talk to your web developers, your content creators.
Right, the people who actually build and manage the website.
Exactly. And depending on what needs fixing, it could involve updating some code, rewriting some content, adding those missing alt tags, making sure your forms are accessible, all kinds of stuff.
Sounds like a team effort.
It is, for sure. And it's important to remember, accessibility isn't a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the internet is always changing. New technologies are popping up all the time. Guidelines get updated. You had to keep up.
So even after we fix everything on that list, our work isn't done.
Exactly. That's why the last step, and maybe the most important one, is retesting.
Okay, so after you make those changes, you got to test it all again.
You got it. You want to make sure those fixes actually worked and that you didn't accidentally break anything else in the process.
Right, makes sense.
And from then on, you just got to make accessibility part of your routine, Like when you update your website, you check for accessibility issues.
But you're building a culture of accessibility.
Exactly. It becomes just part of how you do things online. Now, luckily, this source has a really helpful FAQ section.
Okay.
It answers some of the most common questions people have about this whole accessibility audit thing. Should we take a look?
Yeah, let's do it. I bet our listener is wondering about some of this stuff too. Like, how long does an accessibility audit actually take?
That's a good question. And unfortunately, there's no easy answer. It really depends.
On what?
On the website, how big it is, how complicated it is. A simple site might only take a few days.
Okay.
But a huge e-commerce site, that could take weeks, maybe even months to fully audit.
So it's not a quick fix, but it's a worthwhile investment, right?
Absolutely. It's like preventative maintenance for your website.
Yeah.
Better to fix those problems now than risk legal issues or lose customers later, right?
Right. Prevention is always better than cure.
Exactly. Now, another question I hear a lot is, can I just do this myself? Do I really need to hire a consultant?
Yeah, that's a good one. What does this source say about that?
Well, it's tempting to try the DIY approach. I get it, especially if you're a small business and you're watching your budget.
Yeah.
And there are definitely resources out there, tools you can use.
Yeah.
But this source makes a really strong argument for bringing in an expert.
Why is that?
Because a good accessibility consultant, they just have this specialized knowledge. They see things you might miss.
Well, like what?
Little details, subtle things. And they can give you advice that's tailored to your specific situation.
I see. It's kind of like trying to fix your own plumbing.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I like that analogy.
You can watch all the YouTube videos you want, but sometimes you just need to call a plumber.
Exactly. And a consultant can also help you figure out which things to fix first. Prioritize. They help you create a plan that you can actually follow.
Okay, I'm convinced a consultant sounds pretty important in this whole process.
They are.
Okay.
But there's another thing I want to talk about. It's this whole ADA compliance testing thing.
Right, that keeps coming up. How is that different from a regular accessibility audit?
Good question. So think of it like this. An accessibility audit is the big picture. It covers all sorts of guidelines and best practices, including those in the WCAG.
Okay.
ADA compliance testing is specifically about making sure your website meets the requirements of the Americans with Disabilities Act.
So it's a subset, like a more specific type of audit.
Exactly. Both are important, but they have different focuses.
And if you're doing business in the U.S., you really got to make sure you're AD compliant.
You got it. All right. So let's say we've done our audit. We've made all the fixes. We're feeling good. Is that the end of it?
Are we done?
Well, not quite. Remember, accessibility is a journey, not a destination.
Right. You said that earlier.
Even after you've fixed all the initial issues, you got to keep at it.
So what, like check it every few months or something?
Yeah, something like that. Make it part of your website maintenance routine. Things change, new technologies come out. You got to stay up to date.
Makes sense. So we're always learning, always improving.
That's the spirit. And honestly, it usually makes your website better for everyone in the process.
There is that win-win again.
Yep. Now, before we move on, anything else in that FAQ section that our listeners should know about?
Oh, yeah, good point. Is there anything else in there that you think is really important?
There's one more thing that I think is worth mentioning. And it gets to the heart of why we're even talking about this.
Okay.
The source asks, what happens if my platform is not ADA compliant?
That doesn't sound good.
It's not. And as we've talked about, you could get sued.
Right.
But there's more to it than that. Mm-hmm. The source also talks about how it can hurt your brand.
Oh, right. People can leave bad reviews, tell their friends.
Exactly. Word travels fast these days. But it's not even just about avoiding bad press.
It's about something deeper.
Yeah. It's about sending the right message to your customers, showing them that you value everyone, that everyone is welcome.
I like that.
By prioritizing accessibility, you're saying, we care. And that matters.
It does. Okay, so we've covered a lot here. We talked about why accessibility audits are important. We went through the steps involved. We even looked at some frequently asked questions.
Yeah, we've done a lot.
So what's the big takeaway? What should our listener be thinking about after all of this?
The main thing is accessibility isn't just some technical thing you got to worry about.
Mm-hmm. It's more than that.
It's about good design. It's about being a responsible business. And when you embrace accessibility, you're not only making things better for people with disabilities, you're probably going to reach more customers too, and you're helping to make the internet a better place for everyone.
That's a message I can get behind. All right, so we're almost at the end of our deep dive here, ready to wrap things up.
Yeah, I think so.
It's pretty amazing how much we've learned from, just this one source.
It is, right?
It feels like we went from, what even is this, to, okay, I get it, and here's what I can actually do about it.
That's a good feeling, right? That aha moment.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of doing something, I think it's a good time to, ask our listener a question.
Okay, sure.
Now that you've gone on this deep dive with us, what's your biggest takeaway? What really stuck with you?
Yeah, what's resonating the most? Is it the whole legal side of things?
Or maybe the idea of reaching more people, expanding your audience?
Or maybe it's just like wanting to do the right thing?
Make the internet a better place for everyone.
Exactly.
There's no wrong answer here. It's all about finding what connects with you, personally and professionally.
Absolutely.
But no matter what your motivation is, the next step is, doing something about it.
Turning knowledge into action.
Right, exactly. And it doesn't have to be this huge, overwhelming thing.
Yeah, start small.
Right. Maybe take a look at your own website, really look at it with accessibility in mind.
See if there are any obvious things you can fix.
Yeah, like, is the color contrast okay?
Is there alt text on your images?
Can people easily navigate with just their keyboard?
Those are great places to start.
And don't forget those free automated tools we talked about.
Right, Wavy E and Axe.
Those can help you find some of those, really glaring issues.
It's like a free checkup for your website.
Exactly. And if you need more help, there are always accessibility consultants out there.
They can give you expert advice and help you create a plan that really works for you.
Yeah. As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm thinking about something you said earlier about accessibility being a journey, not a destination.
Right. It's not about checking a box and then forgetting about it.
It's about constantly learning and trying to do better.
It's about making our digital spaces more welcoming for everyone all the time.
And the best part is, well, like we've been saying, this often leads to all these unexpected benefits.
Right. We talked about the legal stuff, the business case for accessibility.
But there's also just this, I don't know, a feeling of satisfaction that comes from knowing you're doing the right thing. You're making a real difference in people's lives.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
And so as we wrap up this deep dive, I just want to say this. By making accessibility a priority, we're not only creating a better web, we're creating a better world.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
A world that's more equitable, more inclusive, more welcoming to everyone.
And that's something we're striving for.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.